Hi, this is Liz and welcome to my podcast, Spiritually Speaking with Liz. Today I'm joined by the fabulous Frayah. Frayah is a yoga teacher and very accomplished artist. Frayah, welcome and thank you for joining me in this episode.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
So I'm going to dive straight in and I'm going to ask you, what drew you to yoga?
Oh, it's a good question. I think I am very lucky. I grew up in a house where yoga was the norm. So very, should we say, alternative household.
That's amazing now.
It is like, I didn't appreciate it at the time. When I was younger, my version of being a rebel was to be as normal as humanly possible because my family was so alternative. But yoga was just always there. My parents went to yoga classes. We'd talk about sort of the philosophy around yoga at the dinner table. So I can't think of a time when yoga wasn't part of my life. It was just always something there. But it wasn't sort of until I was older and sort of after uni that I really got into it properly. And after leaving a bad relationship, shall we say, or a difficult relationship, I sort of found yoga as a way to get back to being myself. So
That's lovely. Out of a horrible situation, then you came back to yourself, which is really nice.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think
that's what yoga can do for you.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. I hear that with a lot of people where they've maybe dabbled in yoga or maybe didn't know anything about it and gone to it through not feeling great about themselves or something happening or deciding that things need to change in my life. And then they discover yoga and then they start to discover themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm sure you, like me, have had lots of tears on the mat, not just ours, but with students, because that movement, nothing, obviously I'm passionate about yoga, but nothing to me moves the body like yoga does.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, yeah, same, passionate about yoga. I mean, I used to dance as well. I love dancing, but I never got quite the same effect from dancing. I think partly because it being more of an aesthetic thing, it was how it looked, how it related to other people. Whereas to me, yoga doesn't have to relate to others in any way. You know, it doesn't, although Instagram might want to convince us otherwise, it doesn't need to look good. It doesn't have to show anything, and it's not about how you portray to the outside world. It's about how it feels inside. So I think, yeah, it's, for me, it's that one form of movement that really is about shifting you and how you are feeling and what's been happening, and internally and externally.
Absolutely. And I think I don't like the word choreographed, but I can't think of another one at the minute, but a well choreographed class can do that because you can go through the chakras, you can go through those movements of release, so you can build something up and then gently bring it back down again, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
It is, and I think you've just sort of touched on that. Yoga really is a one size fits all, isn't it?
Oh, completely. I think the practice itself can suit every single human being and animal, I suppose. But it can fit everybody. That doesn't mean that the same yoga class or the same yoga teacher fits everybody.
No.
But the practice itself can be for anyone.
Yeah, and I think finding your teacher, I was quite lucky actually. The first one I went into, I gelled really well with, and she was my inspiration, and that was I was training in my massage, so that was 1993.
Yeah.
And Barbara was just in a village hall. And I shouldn't say just in a village hall, because a lot of the classes are, and I think the better ones are in a village hall. And
Yeah.
her classes were a revelation to me. So I was just coming into this world from a very different world. And
Yeah.
her little readings at the beginning, just how she was just so amazing and so positive, and made all her own products, and she was just into a healthy lifestyle. And in that village hall, I was the youngest, and there were women in their mid-70s, I would have thought, and they'd been with her a long time. And I know why now, because
Yeah.
obviously they had that connection. But it's I was really lucky to find her. Sometimes it takes a little bit of moving about with people, or sometimes you go to a class and that first class just, that's it, isn't it? You're hooked.
That's it. Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, I'm the same. I've been really lucky with yoga teachers. The ones that I found have always, been the right teachers for me, even if it's the right teacher in that time, because I've done different classes and different styles of yoga. And yeah, I've been very lucky. But I do know I've had people say, "Oh no, yoga's not for me. I tried it once."
Yeah.
And part of me just wants to sort of, I don't know, dragging them to yoga is not the right way forward, but
No.
I want to sort of encourage them to a few
Yeah.
different teachers, because like with so many things in life, we all come at it from our own perspective.
Mhm.
We approach how we teach from our own experience, and
Yes.
so many different aspects come into it. So we can be teaching the same practice and it be an entirely different experience for each person. And that doesn't mean that, you've been to one teacher and you didn't gel with it, so that teacher was bad. They just weren't the teacher for you, and then you go somewhere else and they could have been trained by the same person, but that teacher gels with you and you connect with them, and then it's the best experience of your life. So yeah, I would encourage everybody to just do a bit of window shopping when it comes to yoga teachers.
Window
We don't
shopping.
mind. I mean, I can't speak for all yoga teachers, but I don't mind if people come
No.
to me and go, it wasn't for me. I'm like, that's fine. There's lots of other fab yoga teachers, even just in Ripon, which is where we are, which is quite a small place. We have loads of incredible yoga teachers, and I am never offended if someone goes off to one of the other fab yoga teachers because they found yoga, and that's the important bit.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? And I think with a lot of people, unfortunately there's this image, like the Instagram images of this perfect pose, this really slim girl, very flexible. And it's not about that, is it? It's not about that at all. Great for her or him if they've got themselves to that point and they're as flexible as that, but it doesn't matter. It's about how it fits you, isn't it? And how it works around you and your lifestyle and your body.
That's it. And that's something I'm always trying to encourage with my students is I don't need them or desire them to ever get into a specific posture. I barely teach poses really. I teach how something feels and what we're trying to, I don't want to say accomplish either, because it's not about accomplishing something, but what we're trying to aim for in a pose. I'd rather their pose look nothing like anything that we were aiming for, but them feel the right stretch or feel the right connection to their body. To me, that's more important than them, having all their arms and legs going in the right direction, as it were.
That's lovely though, is that? I really like that. And I think that's what makes you a good teacher. Well, it is, isn't it? It's adapting to the people. It's adapting
Yeah.
to your class, to each individual, and
Yeah.
meeting them where they're at that time.
And really that's what the yoga, we have a bit of a confused idea of what yoga is, particularly in the Western world. It's marketed as quite an aesthetic practice. It's what you wear. Like you said, it's the looking very flexible on Instagram. And not just that, it's making it look like you have a specific sort of life, you know,
Yeah.
there's a look.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, you know, the asana practice, so the physical side of our yoga, is to prepare the body to sit in meditation. You know, it's to connect us to our inner selves, to help us understand how we feel physically, mentally, emotionally, so that we can then sit with that and get into those states of meditation. So to me, forcing someone into a pose that looks a certain way isn't necessary to their yoga practice. You could come to a yoga class and do 2 poses, and if then you can relax into meditation at the end, then the asana, the physical side of it, has done its job.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. And this is a thing in the West. People say, oh, I go to yoga. If you say that in the East, which part?
Yeah, you can't go to yoga.
Yeah, you can't go to yoga. No.
It's not a destination.
No.
Yeah.
And it's something that they laugh at, isn't it? It's something that amuses them. But exactly that, the aim is to get the mind prepared for the meditation and to get the body in a healthy, relaxed state in life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So give me an outline then of what one of your classes might look like.
Yeah, so typically one of my classes I do 90-minute classes, which isn't very fashionable anymore. People tend to do the sort of hour or even less than an hour. But I like my 90-minute classes so that we can take things a bit slower. And we start with around 10 minutes of our pranayama practice, so our breathing. And we'll usually do throughout the term, we'll stick to one breathing practice so we can build on it. We'll then move into our asana practice, so the physical side of it, and we tend to start nice and slow and warm the body up. We'll work maybe towards a vinyasa, which means sort of a collection of movements. I know, Liz, you know all of these things, but I won't assume that everyone listening knows what all these words mean.
Don't assume I do either.
So we'll work towards maybe a vinyasa, maybe sort of a peak pose, or something more difficult and balances. Then we'll start to like cool down a bit, and then finish with what I aim for is at least a good 20-minute meditation at the end, and then we finish by chanting Om. So
it's sounded very similar to mine and how I did my classes. And again, the hour and a half makes such a difference. I did, there was a gym that wanted me to work with them, and I did they would only do hour slots. Yeah. And I just didn't like it. I couldn't, I felt rushed. I didn't feel the people were getting the true benefit. And it was aimed at exercise.
Yeah,
which was it.
I do a couple of hour classes just because of timings of when they fit into people's weeks and things, you know, because we do need to accommodate as well. Of course,
yeah.
But I'm exactly the same. I feel rushed. Inevitably, the thing that gets lost is the meditation at the end, which is the goal. And I just feel like I'm moving them from pose to pose rather than really making the most of that time on the mat. So yeah, for me, the hour and a half, and we live such busy lives, you know, and to give yourself that hour and a half where you're not going, oh, this needs doing, or I should go and put the wash on, or whatever. I just think it is of such benefit, even if you know don't feel like you're getting, I don't know, the physical side of it, or the whatever you're getting, just having that hour and a half to yourself and taken away from phones and distractions, I think is important right now.
Yeah, me too. And it's that dedication to yourself. It's gifting yourself that. There's nothing more precious than time, and there's nothing more precious than time out. So just that switching off of your phone for an hour and a half, even teaching, switching off your phone for an hour and a half, you're just lost in it then. And I think it's it's so powerful, and it I don't know, I think it upsets me sometimes, like you say, that the connotations the West has about yoga and the reasons behind it, which they don't often get really, because like we say, they see it as a fitness, and oh well, I'm not getting any abs, or I'm not and it's about flexibility of the body, but it's about flexibility of the mind, and learning how to take what you've learned on the mat off the mat, isn't it? Out, that's the real test to me, then taking it out into the world and
Yes.
being that calmer person, keeping that meditative practice within and being able to carry that out. So that's why I think at least one yoga class a week is a must, I think, to be able to
Definitely.
do that. Otherwise you can't, to me, well, I can't anyway. I need that, like a reset. So I'll do yoga every morning, but it might only be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, depending. That's asana practice, not the meditation side. But then on a day off, then that will be my treat to think, oh, right, house is nice and quiet. Okay, I'm going to have that hour and a half to myself. And it's just such a joy for
Yeah.
what it brings. And I do, it does make me sad how it's so often just brushed aside as woo woo or hippie, or and there's so much history behind it, but so much knowledge and wisdom behind it. It's just, I mean, our courses that we did, they're really intense, and I don't think people realize that. The philosophy side in itself, just
Yeah.
it's fascinating, but it loses you. It did
Complete. And
me.
you never stop learning. Yeah,
No.
absolutely. It was almost, there was almost a state of panic, I think, because my course was 3 years long, which is something people are usually shocked by, because they think you go off for a weekend or
Yeah.
a month in Bali, and that wasn't the road I chose to go down. I did a 3-year long course, and in those 3 years, there were just points where I just thought, well, I'm never gonna learn all of this. Like, it's vast. The scope of yoga is just so vast, and there is so much to learn, and then there's new things to learn. So like you say, there's ancient knowledge, but then we now have science that backs up what people were teaching thousands of years ago, and I find that like endlessly fascinating. But it does mean that then you go in, oh god, no, there's a new thing to learn now. And yeah, there is so much depth to the practice that you hope to try and convey in a class, but there's just, even
Too
in an hour
much.
and a half,
Yeah.
there's just no way.
There's too
You
much.
blow everyone's minds.
I think the good thing about it as well is because it is so vast and there's so much depth to it, but you can bring in what's currently going on, so any deemed fads or anything that's sort of in the news a lot health-wise, you can bring that into classes, can't you? And to make it more attractive to get people in, and keep it interesting for the people that are with you for the long haul.
Definitely. And I always say that although the fads aren't sort of the origin of yoga or the truth of it, if someone comes in because of the fad, so say hot yoga was so popular,
Yeah.
and if anybody wants to go down that route, do a bit of research, and there's lots of things that go hand in hand with the hot yoga that we won't go into, but it was very popular, and it was something, people always said, have you tried hot yoga? And I said, no, it's not something for me, but I understand the idea behind the practice. And to me, it was a fad, but it got a lot of people understanding the benefits of a regular yoga practice.
Yes.
And so even if a ridiculous fad like, say, goat yoga gets one person going, actually, that was pretty good. I'll come again, but without the goats. Then it was worth doing the goat yoga. So yeah, there's pros and cons to the fads.
Of course there are. And what always makes me laugh is, you've been to India as I have, is
Yeah.
that a yoga class in India is nothing like ours. Are really like, ooh, really nice. They are really, it makes me sort of smirk a bit, because we're trained, take somebody to the limits or just before their limits, you don't push them past it, stay within the comfort, isn't it? It's all about that, because it's not about getting into the pose. But then you go to India, the origin of yoga, and they force you at 7 o'clock in the morning on a concrete floor on a bamboo mat into a shoulder stand or a headstand, and it's like, ow.
Yeah, there's nothing gentle about it.
They're really not. They're really, why are you not? Why can't you do this? And because it's 7 o'clock and I'm still a bit stiff.
Yeah.
And the floor's hard. I like my extra squishy mat.
Yeah.
Extra wide mat. So
Yeah.
7 mil extra wide here. I don't go for the.
No, I'm with you on that. I love my mat.
Yeah. So it does always make me giggle, that. And I did some training in India, and I really enjoyed it on one hand, but on the other hand, it was a real mental struggle for me, the way that they do push you.
Yes. Yeah. And that's sort of a bit of an odd one, isn't it? Because to me, the whole idea with yoga is to understand your own body. And if someone is then pushing you into something, you're not listening to your own body.
No.
But then, that's coming from the country that,
country of origin.
So yeah, I do. Sometimes I like to throw bits of that into my classes, like just to let my students know that I'm actually being quite nice to them. So things like, so traditionally cow's head pose, in some of the books will be 12 minutes on either side every single day. And so when they're all getting into cow's head pose and going, oh, ow, why are you making us do this? I'm like, I'm not asking you to hold it for 12 minutes. So technically I'm being really kind.
Wow, yeah, 12 minutes. No, couldn't do that anymore.
No.
Right, slight shift here. You have been doing some yoga retreats, day retreats with sound bath, haven't you? So
yeah,
just give me a brief, how does that work? How does the sound benefit the yoga? How does the yoga benefit the sound?
sure. So yeah, we've been doing events where I've teamed up with a friend of mine, Sarah, who's a sound therapist. And what we do is, the general kind of way it works is we start off usually with some sort of intention setting practice. So we tend to theme these around whatever's going on. So like our next one will be a Samhain themed one, which is the beginning of winter. So we'll do some sort of intention setting around that. We'll then practice some yoga, but it will be very gentle, usually restorative yoga, to really prepare the body for lying down for the sound bath. But more than that, it's to, like we were saying about giving people that time, these events are really about having that time for yourself, about connecting in with yourself. And our events rooted sound and yoga, and that really kind of is the essence of what it's about. It's rooting into your own being, rooting into community as well, because a lot of it is that connection of the other people who are with you, and kind of rebalancing and finding your way back to yourself through the yoga. And then we integrate the yoga and the sound together. So Sarah will play instruments and we'll go through maybe a gentle flow or a few kind of like different movements with the sound, which is really lovely, because then you have the vibrations from the instruments. So for people who haven't had any sound therapy or been to a sound bath, Sarah uses things like Tibetan bowls, gongs, drums, all instruments that the vibration is the healing part. Obviously I'm not a sound therapist, so I won't try and explain any of that bit. And so then we go into a sound bath, and because we've done all of those bits before, the body is well prepared for that lying down and getting deep into meditation to get all the benefits from the sound bath.
Sounds bliss. That
and then we always
lovely.
finish with something tasty at the end. So usually cake and a drink, which
nice,
bit
of grounding. Yeah. So how long would that be, the yoga and the sound bath all together?
So they're 2 hours long, with a little bit at the beginning and the end. We usually sit around for a while at the end eating the cake, and
nobody wants to move, do they?
Nobody wants to leave. We always end up going home late. So around 2 hours.
That sounds really good. I think I might have to pop along to one of those.
Absolutely.
And try that out. So before we wrap up, you also have a YouTube channel where you've got classes on there and you've got some meditations on there as well, haven't you? I'll link that in the bio, in the description below. But can you just give a brief description about how the different classes that you've got on there?
Sure. So I have meditations, pranayama, so the breathing, and the asana, so the physical side. I tend to keep them relatively short. So like we were saying about busy people's attention span online tends to be shorter. So so they're quite, shall we say, bite-sized chunks, and I keep them split up. So you can go and just practice your pranayama, you can just practice the physical side, or you can just practice the meditation, or you can do 3 videos together and do a whole practice.
Perfect. So it's not quite the going to a class, is it? But it's a very close second, and it just gives people that option to be able to, like what I say on a day off and I've got the house to myself, to think, oh, well, I've got maybe 20 minutes, I can just do some of the physical practice. I've got 10 minutes, I can do some of the pranayama. So it's a nice mix and match, actually, isn't it? That people
Absolutely. And I have like different, so there's, I have things like videos for yoga for a bad back, or yoga to feel strong. So there's different themes as well. So hopefully there's something that appeals to everybody.
Oh, I'm sure there will be. Thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed our little yoga chat. I could go on forever about yoga. Could go on for about everything, to be honest. But I really appreciate you joining me. Thank you. And I will put all Frayah's details in the show notes below. So if you live locally, you can contact her. If you don't live locally, you can go onto her YouTube channel and you can check out what she's got to offer. Frayah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Liz.
And thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening, and I will see you again soon. Bye.